Hello everyone, welcome back to my series on the finances of binge eating and obesity. We have some interesting stories today, so let's begin. This next person was almost 400 pounds at their peak. They've lost around 50 pounds so far and are recovering from BED. Have you noticed a change in food spending since recovery? Definitely. I used to eat fast food at least once a night and often would gravitate towards the bigger, most expensive dishes on the menu. Now I eat out a lot less and try to go for smaller options like salad, or if I do get a bigger meal, I tend to save part of it for another meal, which saves me time and money. On the grocery side of things, I've been buying a lot more base ingredients, which are a lot cheaper than pre-made food. And honestly, there really are a lot of simple dishes that don't take much more time than simply reheating food, so I wouldn't say it's a loss of time either. Did you have any go-to foods that you spent an excessive amount of money on? I won't say what place because it's fairly local, but there was a fast food chicken place I would go to pretty much every night. This adds up for sure. And the thing is, it's hard to even realize it's a problem because if you spend $300 per week on fast food, you just sort of get it in your head that that's a needed expense when it's really not. Have you noticed a change in spending on medical care since recovery? My medical care spending has actually increased, to be honest, but I think this is more a byproduct of me being a fairly young person who has lost a decent amount of weight in a short period of time. The thing is, when you're severely obese, your hormones can become very messed up, and certain bodily functions can just stop or massively slow down, and starting them back up again can be complicated. However, I wouldn't consider this to be a reason not to lose weight. And I know if I hadn't started to lose weight, a lot of these issues would come back to bite me when I was older. Additionally, I'm a lot less afraid to go to the doctor now. And while it's frustrating to now have to explain that I'm not taking any diet pills and I'm just losing weight through a caloric deficit, it's a much less stressful experience now that the doctor's office is no longer a sudden and painful reality check. I've now done the reality check myself. I asked for clarification on what they meant by people thinking they're taking diet pills, and they said, "Oh, it's kind of funny because multiple doctors have asked me if my weight loss is a result of diet pills, and I just have to explain that I've been doing a caloric deficit and exercise." I think it ties back to the assumption that weight loss requires an intensive program or something. I've had regular people ask me if I'm following some specific diet or taking any pills or anything, when all I've been doing is eating less and eating more whole foods, and I haven't really cut out anything entirely. Have you noticed a change in spending on exercise and other discretionary health costs? No, not really, actually. My favorite exercise activity is walking, which doesn't cost anything, and if anything can actually save money because I can now comfortably walk a half a mile distance instead of having to drive. Planet Fitness offered free admission to teens during the summer, so I used that. And while I haven't renewed a membership yet, I know that it's not very expensive. Have you noticed a change in spending in other aspects like clothing, hygiene, and travel? Yes, but also no. I would say my spending on clothes has balanced out because I no longer have to buy a size 4X or 5X, which are usually only online and more expensive due to the larger fabric usage. But I do find myself generally buying more clothes due to the increased options I now have. However, there's a lot of clothes from when I was younger or that I've avoided up until this point out of fear that I now fit as well. Did you or anyone around you ever experience financial strain due to your size or disorder? Absolutely. I live with my mom, and at the height of my binging, my mom would frequently buy foods that I would binge on, and then she would run out of food in about a day. One of my worst memories is going to a park with my friends and having to sit alone the entire time because I knew I was too big to go on any of the rides. And a lot of the people would characterize this as fatphobia, but I was fat because I obsessively ate my feelings and engaged with food as a form of self-harm. I feel much better being closer and closer to a healthy weight range and being able to engage in things designed for people in a more healthy weight range than I would if everything was remade to accommodate someone that big. Because my weight loss is a personal accomplishment that I've done. And in regards to the increased healthcare I've needed due to my weight loss, I'd honestly compare it to withdrawals that addicts often experience, or how there's very adverse effects to a malnourished person eating a very rich and full meal. Bodies can adjust to a lot of things that aren't healthy or good, and stopping those things inherently will cause problems as things adjust back to how they are normally. Whether that be stopping a drug or medication, or going from eating 3,000 to 4,000 calories per day down to 2,000. And just as withdrawals aren't a reason to tell an addict to not quit drugs, I don't think temporary adverse health effects is a reason not to lose weight, as a lot of fat activists try to claim. Instead, like getting off any addiction, it's a reason to take it slowly because you get far better results. So while I may have a few more doctor's appointments in the short term, I know that's minuscule compared to the cost of dealing with long-term obesity complications like diabetes or heart disease. With all the talk there seems to be about mythical weight loss drug companies, no one ever seems to talk about how the pharmaceutical companies make a lot more money off of medication that manages the symptoms of obesity and has to be taken constantly unless someone loses weight. Yeah, that's true. But this last statement about the pharmaceutical companies making a lot of money off of managing obesity reminds me of a reality TV episode I watched. There's a show called Till Death Do Us Part, and it's basically where couples get advice from a finance expert on improving their finances as a whole. But there was this one episode where this couple was really overweight. They were both morbidly obese. And they were spending so much money on food and medications to manage their obesity.
We probably go through about $500 worth of medication a month. Maud's got for blood pressure. I've got blood pressure, acid reflux, cholesterol.
3, 4, 5, 6. Hurry up, take it away.
I think they were spending like $120 to $150 per week on pizza. And this was also in the mid-2000s, so that would be at least $200 a week in today's dollars. And on top of that, they were also smokers and spending over $400 per month on cigarettes. And all I remember thinking when watching this episode is their unhealthy lifestyle is costing them a lot. Not only are they spending a lot of money on food and cigarettes, like over $2,000 per month, but they're also spending a lot of money on medication to manage the effects of chronically overeating and the smoking. And the show is also set in Canada, where medication costs are a lot lower than they are in the United States. So I can imagine that you would be spending at least twice as much on these medications in the United States as you do in Canada. So yeah, long-term obesity makes fast food and processed food and pharmaceutical companies the winners at the end of the day. This next person has lost 76 pounds and has recovered from severe binge eating. Have you noticed a change in spending on food since recovery? Yes. My grocery bills have been so much easier to manage now that I'm not eating every snack that comes into my house. I've also saved a ton of money due to rarely eating out. I used to buy fast food 5 times a week for lunch. That was typically anywhere from $10 to $15 a day just on lunches. Now I can spend $15 to $20 per week and have healthy, nutrient-dense food. The savings literally paid for my family of 4's trip to Legoland for my son's 5th birthday, where we stayed for 4 days and 3 nights. That really put into perspective how much money I was wasting. Did you have any go-to foods that you spent an excessive amount of money on? I would stop every day to get a soda and a king-size candy bar of some sort on my way to pick up my kids from daycare. In my head, I was like, I'm thirsty and need a snack. Instead of just filling up a water bottle at my office and having a healthy option with me, I would spend $3 to $5 on garbage food that would leave me satisfied for a moment and then hungry again within an hour. Have you noticed a change in spending on medical care since recovery? Since losing weight, I've noticed I no longer have constant sinus infections and colds, so that's really cut down on all the antibiotics and copays I was having. Have you noticed a change in spending on exercise and other discretionary health costs since recovery? I haven't had any real change on exercise costs, because even though I didn't use my gym membership before recovery, I still paid for it. Now I've just bought some small weights and resistance bands to be able to do home workouts. Have you noticed a change in spending in other aspects like clothing, hygiene, and travel? I would say I'm spending more on clothes because I'm now able to wear things I like versus things that fit. I now have to buy tampons because my weight was affecting me so badly that I barely used to get periods. There's no real change in travel, but that's mostly because I have a 3- and 5-year-old, so doing a lot of traveling with them is hard. Did you or anyone around you ever experience financial strain due to your size or disorder? My husband and I did experience some financial issues due to my excessive eating and me trying to hide how much I was eating. We could try to have one budget for groceries and restaurants, but I would blow through that with my need to constantly be eating. I would tell anyone to stop watching body acceptance content and truly sit with yourself on why you're as big as you are. I've gone from 280 to 202.8 pounds with about 43 more pounds to lose. I will never let the health at every size crowd get me back to 280. It was miserable, tiring, and a financial burden. Also, smaller clothes have much better discounts. This next person is 15 years old and they've recovered from BED, and at their peak, they were almost 200 pounds at 13 years old. Have you noticed a change in spending on food since recovery? I'm going to start out by saying that I live in Europe, but I'll use a calculator app to tell you how much money I spent in US dollars. From what I've heard, in the US, fast food is cheaper than regular non-processed food, but here it's kind of the opposite. So as someone who would order KFC and McDonald's when I felt the need to binge, it cost me a lot, so I would need around $30 every 2 days if we add in all the sugary drinks and ice cream that I got with the food. However, now I cook my own meals, I don't need to spend more than $10 to $15 on groceries per week. Yeah, this idea that fast food is cheaper than regular non-processed food here in the United States is a myth. If we're talking about food that you can cook at home, it's definitely not cheaper to go out and eat fast food than it is to cook food at home. Did you have any go-to foods that you spent an excessive amount of money on? Yes, I was obsessed with candy and salty stuff like chips, Cheetos, Doritos, but occasionally donuts too. Every day after school, I would get like 2 bags of chips or a bunch of chocolate like Snickers bars or Kinder. Have you noticed a change in spending on medical care since recovery? Yes, I have. My disorder has caused me so many health problems that even if healthcare is free here, I still had to spend a lot of money on medications before recovery. A lot of that money I wouldn't have needed to spend if I just recovered earlier. I needed a slap in the face and a reality check on our financial situation so I could finally wake up and recover. I started seeing a nutritionist for my weight loss journey because I literally had prediabetes and I was terrified to end up like my mother, who never recovered from BED and actually ended up diabetic. I also had really messed up teeth from sugar I was consuming, and the dentist bill cost my parents so much. At this point, the guilt around binging had multiplied by 100. I needed medication for my kidneys because they were damaged from all the salty stuff I was binging on, and I don't know if this counts, but before recovery, I would spend a lot of money on skincare because the food I was eating was so bad for my skin it would make my acne really bad, especially the salty snacks. Mind you, I was almost 200 pounds at 13 years old, so you can imagine I had issues. However, now, I don't spend half as much on medical care as I did before recovery. I am still dieting, but currently I am 125 pounds and very healthy. Have you noticed a change in spending on exercise and other discretionary healthcare costs? I am very active at the gym because I'm working on building muscle, so I spend around $27 for a gym membership at a very good gym, and $12 on weights that I bought to exercise at home, and I also go on a lot more vacations now. Before recovery, the money we now spend on trips and the gym would have been spent on binge foods. I was not active at all back then. I felt like I was about to pass out from just doing a push-up. I felt so guilty and insecure, I remember literally crying after PE class because I was the slowest kid. Have you noticed a change in spending in other aspects like clothes, hygiene, and travel since recovery? Absolutely. I remember watching your video and all the people who said they smelled bad because they were so fat. I couldn't relate more. I could shower right before going to school, but it was pointless because by the time I got there, I would have been all sweaty and smelly just from going up the stairs to get to my class. It was so embarrassing to be around people. Don't even get me started on how terrible my breath was from having messed up teeth. People didn't even want to get close to me at school. It sucks to think that me, simply existing, was making others uncomfortable. But who is to blame for my poor hygiene? As for clothing, I would always buy the baggiest clothes the men's section had because I hated myself so much, and my size just kept going up every year, and the shipping costs were awful. But now that I'm thinner, I actually spend more on clothes because I really do like fashion, and it's easier for me to find cute clothes in my size. Did you or anyone around you ever experience financial strain due to your size or disorder? Yes. I think I already mentioned that all of this money that was being spent was my parents' money. We were also in a bad financial situation because my dad had to switch to a lower paying job around that time, so we wouldn't get to do a lot of stuff. Most of our money would go towards food, medicine, and hygiene products. And most of the time this would be a waste because, as I've said, they didn't work. I would still smell bad and have bad skin. This disorder cost me a lot of time and money, and it robbed me of my childhood, and I'm so glad it's over. I can now afford to go out and have fun on the weekends, and I can afford to do fun stuff that I couldn't have imagined doing 2 years ago. I started loving myself a lot and taking care of my health, and my life is just so much better. I also feel like mentioning that these fat activists that you talk about have an actual negative impact on people's lives. Before I recovered, Life would give me all sorts of signs to recover, like the ones I told in my story. But something that was pulling me back was my best friend at the time, who was a fat activist. I would text them whenever I binged again, telling them that I feel awful and I need someone to comfort me, and all this person did was tell me to unlearn my fat phobia, understand that there's nothing wrong with what I'm doing, and I should just relax. As I watched your videos, I kept thinking, well, that sounds familiar. And this is why. Because this person would constantly tell me this stuff and make me feel bad. At some point, I finally got fed up with it. I couldn't live like that anymore, so I announced to the friend group that I've decided to finally go on a diet, lose weight, and start living my life. And this kid literally had an entire argument filled with paragraphs on how I am a bigot, and I'm fatphobic, and I'm reinforcing the beauty standard. I obviously debunked all their arguments because they were toxic and stupid, and this person blocked me and never spoke to me again. These are real teenagers being brainwashed by TikTok. I couldn't even tell if they were serious. I hope they find peace and get out of this awful internet space. That sounds like an awful situation, but I'm really glad you didn't let your former friend deter you from becoming healthier. Congrats. Anyway, that's the end of the video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Thank you to the people who submitted their stories, and I will see you in my next video.